Hi, welcome to Stalwarts of Music with Aditya Veera, Season 2. This show is powered by Perpetual Buzz Experiences. They are an artist representation company with three very basic but lofty goals. They are a launchpad for indie musicians, helping them leverage success in the best possible manner. They also help generate funding for social causes and make sure that people have a good time throughout the process. Be sure to check them out on www.perpetualbuzz.com. Speaking of two of my distinguished guests today, the first one being a guitar virtuoso, he absolutely needs no introduction. He is none other than Paul Gilbert. He is one of the most prolific guitar players of all time. He's played with the band Mr. Big and also played for the supergroup Razor X. He released several albums and he launched his solo career in 1996, for which he also put in a lot of effort in terms of solo albums and has had numerous collaborations and guest appearances with musicians from across the world. He was voted fourth best on Guitar One magazine for being one among the top 10 greatest guitar shredders of all time. He was also ranked in Guitar World's 2008 list of 50 fastest guitarists of all time. And I'd especially like to introduce my very special guest, who is none other than India's very own Mohini Dey. She's described as the most successful musician by Under 30 list of Forbes India magazine. She's been working professionally in the music industry for the past 18 years. She's worked with artists like A.R. Rahman, Zakir Hussain, Quincy Jones, Louis Banks, Ranjit Barot, Pliny, and many more. She's worked for companies such as MTV India, Levi's, Titan, Bacardi, and a lot more. She's done a tour with the biggest Japanese band of all time called BZs. She's also played on over 60 movies and albums worldwide. So without any further ado, I'm delighted to welcome my guests, Paul Gilbert, and my special guest, Mohini Dey, who will be joining in for a very special segment. Hi, Paul. Namaste. How are you? Which part of the world are you in right now?
I'm in Portland, Oregon. And how are you?
Very well. Couldn't be happier.
That's good news.
So let's get started with our agenda for today. I have a couple of very interesting questions coming your way.
Okay.
What are some of the first experiences in your life that made you consider the endless possibilities music could offer you?
Well, my parents had a really good record collection.
Mhm.
I was born in 1966, so the main way that you listened to recorded music then was vinyl.
Uh-huh.
And they had most of the Beatles albums on vinyl, and the Rolling Stones and the Who and the Animals, a lot of 60s rock and pop. And they also had classical music.
Oh,
There
wow.
was a lot of Bach and Mozart, Beethoven, that sort of thing. And blues. My dad also really liked, he had albums by Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, B.B. King.
Hmm.
My parents would play the records and I'd hear it. And also my uncle was a really good guitar player. And he encouraged me to listen to Jimi Hendrix and David Bowie and punk bands like the Ramones the MC5 and Iggy and the Stooges. So it was really in the family. And then, of course, on the radio and on TV, there was music as well.
I see. From whatever you've said right now, from what I can gauge, music has been running in the blood, right? Your entire
Yeah, well,
family has been into
yeah,
this.
my uncle was really influential because I didn't see him that often because he didn't live close by. But when he would visit, I had a little guitar around the house. I couldn't play it, and he'd pick it up and he would get music out of it. And he also just had a really good touch. And to be able to see that close up was it really let me know like what it's supposed to happen. Because I
Right.
had a guitar teacher later on, and my guitar teacher had a lot of knowledge. He knew what scales were and what chords, and he could play fairly well. But my uncle like had more of the real rock feel. It was more of the feel part of it, and that was a hard thing to explain. But when I watched my uncle up close, I'd be like, "Oh, it's supposed to sound like that," and that was really helpful to be able to see that so close up.
If I were to ask you, uh, do you need to have music running in the blood to make music or to learn music?
I don't think so. I mean, I've got a friend of mine that I've worked with a bunch on different albums. His name is Linus of Hollywood, and I've talked to him about that, and he said like nobody in his family was musical at all,
Okay.
and they also were really not supportive about him being a musician.
Oh
But
no.
he loved it, and so he was spent all his time learning how to play and listening to music, and he's a professional musician. So it it only takes one exception to prove the rule. Is not a rule.
Right. Let's talk about this aspect of composition. I'd like to know as to what prompts you to write music based on a particular theme. What becomes the impetus and the catalyst? I'm sure you're a prolific composer and a guitar player. You've made more than a dozen solo albums and been part of many incredible bands that include the likes of Razor X, Mr. Big, and many more. You've also had several guest appearances in different parts of the world. You're making music and playing your instrument all the time, which is primarily the guitar. So, is there a gestation period? Do you have time to think about the music you are putting out? Since you're constantly doing this back to back.
Well, it's a combination of inspiration where you're not even trying to make music and just a melody pops into your head, and a combination between that, which is sort of lucky when that happens, and also the craft.
Hmm.
Where you might have something that you can develop, and you learn how to take this basic small idea
Uh-huh.
and to expand it out into a whole song and build it. So in a way, it's almost a way of looking at the way the human brain works,
Hmm.
where you've got like the front part of your brain that's analytical and is good at math. You can think about things, but there's also part that's just sort of like an instinct where you suddenly get an emotion or an idea and you don't even know where it came from, but the brain is complicated, so you have to be able to use both those tools together, and until it's finished. The more you do it, the better you get. So,
You did mention about the aspect of the human brain, which kind of brought me to this follow up question. Do you mean to say that you're a musician who is more cerebral to his approach towards music than being emotional?
I don't know. I think I just try everything. So you're just it's funny. Sometimes the metaphor I think of is like it's like fighting a bear. Like when you're fighting a bear, you know you're going to lose, but you still try to stay alive. So to me, like music, I love it, but it's also you're never going to win. You just do your best, and if you survive, you're like, "Whoa! I lived another day." Uh, I don't know. That's kind of a metaphor that makes me laugh. But that's a good question, and I use both. I'm very aware that there are times when I'll be very emotional, and I will get music out of it that I wouldn't have gotten any other way.
Hmm.
But if I didn't have the cerebral part, I wouldn't be able to develop it. It's
Sure.
so it's really handy. It's really helpful to have both those tools.
Correct. Beyond the skin of being an incredible guitar player and the music educator, do you ever experience a sense of longing or wanting to reach out to something beyond other than where you are and what you're doing? What is that sort of aspiration that you have for yourself?
Well, I've been had a musical career since I was probably 19.
Hmm.
So it's been decades. And so my dreams and expectations about my place in the business, I've had a chance to get a sense of where I fit,
Uh-huh.
what can I what size of audience I can expect, what kind of reaction. So that, after been doing it for so long, I don't really expect to be surprised. I probably am not going to win a Grammy, whatever I what the sort of things I do, Grammy people aren't interested in that. But guitar players are really interested in what I do, and that's fine. I love the audience I have, and yeah, so that's the thing. Just because I've been doing it a long time, it's like, oh, this is the kind of people that like what I do. I like them too, so it's a nice
Yeah.
relationship.
I think your music is way beyond a Grammy. So
I
we're
never
talking.
liked the Gram. When I was a kid, I'd watch the Grams and just go like, "Oh, these people won. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not into that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're way beyond all of that. I have a tech question since you love those. Why did you switch from the 25.5-inch scale length on your old Ibanez PGM model guitar to the 24.75-inch scale length on the Ibanez Fireman signature guitar? Was it because of the change in tone, or was it because of you like the feel of looser strings?
Well, it's funny. For the longest time, I didn't even know what scale length was.
Okay.
Like when I was a kid, I had no idea that like a Strat was different than a Les Paul, and for a long time after that, I didn't know either. I mean, I think when I designed the Fireman, I just liked the body shape, and I think I had asked because I've been as guys when they were building it, they said, "Well, what style of neck do you want?" And I'm of course like any guitar player, I have my guitar heroes. One of my heroes is Pat Travers, and he was famous for playing a
Oh
Gibson
wow.
Melody Maker, for
Yeah.
playing a Gibson Melody Maker. And so I had bought a Melody Maker just to see if I could play like Pat Travers, just as an experiment. And I liked the neck, and I said, well, how about like that Melody Maker, sort of neck kind of like that one. And
Right.
so I didn't even ask them. I didn't know about the scale length. I just knew it was like kind of like that Pat Travers guitar. And later on, I learned like, oh, they're actually different lengths. And so when I was designing it, I actually had no idea that there was any difference. It was just very. I could just tell there's something different about this neck that was was kind of cool, but I didn't know what it was. But now that I know, uh, I like them both. I mean, it's not. I've got pretty big hands, so I can I can play on either one and it's fine. Um, would say that I do a lot of bending, and also I do like to do licks where I stretch a lot. So those things are a little bit easier to do on a sort of scale.
Right.
But I also, I just one of my new guitars I've been playing a lot is this new PGM, and it's
Mhm.
got 25 and a half, and I like it too. So I think mostly I just like to have a big guitar collection so I can try out different stuff, and whatever seems inspiring at the time I can use. So there's not like one perfect thing I want to use forever. I actually, I like to, have a choice.
Incredible. Uh, when it comes to your professional life, I'm sure there has been sort of an internal logic or a strategy to the unfolding of your life, right? So, could you throw some light on that?
So and a logic of what again?
Of the unfolding of your life?
Of my
Like,
life.
uh huh.
I think like when I think about my whole life, sometimes I think about things where I've really changed my mind about something. Because that to me that's kind of interesting. Like certain things I haven't. Like when I was a kid, I loved the Beatles. Now I still love the Beatles. Like that hasn't changed.
Constant.
But I think the biggest change where I really feel different than I did before was about having kids.
Okay.
Because when I was younger, I really didn't want to have kids. I was like, I want to have a music career. I don't think that's going to work. if I have kids, because I'm going to be traveling a lot, I'm going to be too busy, and I was just, any situation where I might have kids, I'd be like, I'm really scared of that. I really, really tried hard not to have kids.
Okay.
And then I got, I got married, and now I have my wife really wanted to have a child, so we did. And the whole time I'm like, oh, I don't know about this, And then my child was born,
Hmm.
and immediately I loved him,
Okay.
and it's been, there have been a lot of challenges. It takes time and work, and not everything's easy, but I completely love my son, and I wish,
Very
I
cute.
wish I had started earlier and it had more, so that's something where I think that's sort of an interesting question for anybody, especially as they get older. Is like, what did you learn where you were wrong or where you changed your
Yeah.
mind? And
Yeah.
uh, then that to me was the biggest thing where I went like, my thoughts and my feelings on that are so different than when up until I really until I became a father.
Lovely, lovely, lovely relation. I'm sure it's a very rare bond, right? Father and a son together, and I'm sure there must be another great musician in the making.
He doesn't. He. I'm teaching him to strum,
Uh huh.
but I can only do it by bribing him with toys. He did purely his music. He's not interested. He wants to be a magician.
We'll see. We'll see what unfolds in the next couple
Yeah,
of years.
exactly. He's 8, so it's time for change.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of the divine force, what form and shape does your belief in the divine take? And is there a practice that is associated with it?
Oh well, I mean, I wasn't brought up with any kind of belief in that department,
Okay.
but certainly there are unanswered questions and mysterious things that happen,
Uh huh.
and I think what happens sometimes is when you talk about that stuff, it's easy to start dividing people. You go, like, "Oh, I believe this. Oh, I believe something different," and then suddenly you can't be friends with people that you would normally really be good friends with.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I don't. That I think that's one thing that I love about music
Uh huh.
is that through music I've been given the opportunity to connect to different people all over the world, and it's so easily connects people. And, I mean, I suppose, if somebody doesn't like that kind of music, you can maybe that could cause a division, like, I can't stand rock and roll," or whatever it is. But in general, I mean, I really feel music is a connecting force, and, music is very mysterious.
Uh huh.
I don't know if anybody can explain. I mean, I've seen, like, Leonard Bernstein, the classical conductor, has a great series where he talks about, like, the mathematics of music and sort of gets into, like, theories of why it might resonate with us humans, but that's not really a satisfying answer. It's one of those things where you go like, well, I can feel it, so I believe it. And so to me, that's what I have the most experience with. I can hear music, I feel it, I don't know why, but but it's a very real feeling, and very, that's so that's where I spend the most time.
I think you're the chosen one. But
Well, who knows? I mean, that's hard to say. Um,
at least from the music, that's what I
uh,
feel.
yeah.
Incredible. You've had great success in Japan on multiple occasions during your time with Razor X and your time with Mr. Big. So, what are the elements of Paul Gilbert, the human being that feels bonded and connected to Japan?
Well, I I didn't really choose Japan. Japan sort of chose me, because we were with Mr. Big. We were touring everywhere. We started off touring in America, and when we went to Japan, suddenly the audience was bigger, and the audience was more excited to hear our music. And we were surprised, like, wow, you know, because we were playing the same show that we did in America, but the response was so much bigger.
Right.
So, you know, we just kept going, and you know, it was just a nice surprise, and just certainly, you know, especially when "To Be With You," the single started to be successful, that opened up. Uh, we started going to Southeast Asia, to Indonesia, and Taiwan, Thailand, Philippines, uh, and those places became really big for us as well. And we still, you know, South America and Europe, it all, you know, went to all those places. So, but you know, it's something that I've never been able to explain it. You know, because it's not me that did it. It was you know, this is talking about, you know, people's response to what I do, and that I just do what I do. So.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You had a very long and distinguished career and still on the road as a performer, music educator, and I'm sure you engage with a lot of students in the process. So, what are some of the joys or the gratifications or whatever word you'd like to use in terms of some of the most intense moments in your life?
Oh, let's see. Well, first thing comes to mind is when there's a change of some kind, or when you're, you know, you get excited because you see a change coming up. And so I always remember, you know, because obviously when I started, you know, wasn't born a famous musician, so those steps
Uh huh.
along the way. I always remember in Race Rex was my first kind of successful band that
Correct.
made albums. Uh, the first time we played a club and we sold it out.
Wow.
That was one of the best moments of my whole career, because we didn't know, you know, we thought, "Does anybody kinda come to see us?" You know, and we were really trying to promote the show, and we none of us had very much money, and we put all our money into, like, trying to promote, and we thought, "If nobody comes to the show, I don't know how we're gonna pay the rent because we spent all the money." And I remember just showing up at the club, and it was so packed that I could barely get in, you know, and just going like, "Ooh," you know, first of all, I'll be able to pay the rent this month, and second of all, this is just like, it seems like like I have a chance. Like, this might mean that I have a chance to have a career as a musician. So that was one of the best. Like, the first time Racer X sold out the Troubadour was incredible.
Very inspiring. It just gives me goosebumps listening to all of this from you, real time.
And
Like you.
yeah, and oh, go ahead.
No, no, please, please, please
Oh,
go on.
well, you mentioned teaching, and then that was something that was really unexpected.
Uh huh.
Because you know, I did have a goal of, like, okay, I'm going to be in a band. I'm going to do concerts and albums, and that
Hmm.
was a goal that I was, you know, aiming towards. I
Okay.
never thought, like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to teach and do a lot of, you know, be a teacher." I just never did any preparation for that at all. But people, you know, I remember even when I was a teenager, you know, I'd play a club, you know, with my band, and people would come up afterwards. They'd be, "Dude, do you give lessons? You know, can I take a lesson from you?" And I'd never, I thought, okay, well, you know, $10, I don't know, you know, and so even when I was a teenager, I started teaching, and then, you know, later on, it was a good way to make a little extra money, and
Right.
I enjoyed it. And you know, now it's one of the main things I do. I have an online school, and it's a it's a way to kind of take apart music, you know, connect with people, and it and try to, and you know, every time a student has a problem,
Hmm.
you know, every musician has the same problems. So, you know, I may have solved some of them, but it to open that problem up again and look at it, you always learn something from that process of going, like, okay, well, this is you know, whether it's a problem of listening, or a problem of playing, or a problem of, you know, how to write songs, or whatever it is. When you go in and you repair it, or dig deeper, you always get something out of it. So I've learned so much from that process.
Marvelous. You did mention about To Be With You. As you
Mhm.
rightly mentioned, it was a massive hit in the sense that it was going nuclear on all the musical charts in terms of success. And this might be a little bit of a personal question, but later you had to leave the band a couple of years later. So, do you feel that you could have done something in order to safeguard the interest of the band? Did you ever feel that the band would have taken a different roadmap if all of you had stayed together as the original lineup?
Oh, I never really thought of it. I mean, we got back together
Yeah,
as the original lineup later, so
correct.
in a way that it just, we just there was a break period, and then we were back together. Um, I think I thought about that more with Racer X
Okay.
because with Mr. Big, we were together for about 8 years before we broke up or before I left.
Uh-huh.
With Racer X, we only did 2 studio albums, and then we did a live album, but it was mostly the same
Yeah.
songs.
Yeah.
And then I left to join Mr. Big. So, like, Racer X was the band I always felt like, "Oh, I wish, if I had stayed longer, I wonder what that could have been."
Uh-huh.
'Cause we actually had written a lot of songs that we didn't never recorded, and but also with Racer X, we got back together in, like, late '90s
Yeah.
and did a couple albums, and we were able to do a lot of those songs that I'd been thinking about. So, in both situations, we were able to get back together and do it again. So that was I was happy we could do that.
Very, very diplomatic answer.
Well, it's true, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just kidding. I'm trying to get back in the sense from another view to the same question as to what is that most passionately moves you, stirs you, drives you internally within yourself beyond the technical virtuosity, the showmanship, the incredible musician that you are. So, what is it that you feel most moved about when you see or hear, or what are some of the passionate concerns that impacts the deep recesses of your being?
Well, there's something that I call the inner melodic generator,
Uh huh.
which is basically being able to hear music in your head.
Okay.
And it's that's the thing that I had before I ever played an instrument. I would hear music in my head, and I didn't know how to play the guitar yet. And that was my goal. I thought, I somehow have to get this musical idea and get it to happen on my guitar. And then, when you learn an instrument, of course, there's like certain things that you're supposed to learn. You learn the chords and the
Yeah.
scales, and you learn cover songs. And I'm glad I learned all those things. But in the process, I kind of forgot about my original goal of connecting to the inner melodic generator.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I don't think I forgot 100%, but basically what happens, like, with shred guitar, you train your fingers to do these amazing things. And like when you improvise, you just sort of let your fingers run free. And they know where they're going, because you practiced a lot. So you're hitting the correct notes, and you have good technique, and good music comes out. But most of it is sort of like like good habits that you've built, and you get this fiery stuff, and I like it. It has a good sound, but it's not really melodic. You're not doing melodies,
Correct.
and so I did that for decades, and then suddenly I realized that when it came to playing melodies, I really wasn't good at it. Like I had melodies in my head, but I couldn't play them easily on guitar, and it was kind of embarrassing. I was I remember I was at a Christmas party, and there was a guitar there, and I tried to play Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which is, a really popular,
Yeah. Yeah.
simple melody, and I tried to play it, and I messed it up, and I thought, "I'm I have a reputation of being a good guitar player, and I can't play Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. This is so embarrassing." And of course, if I had 5 minutes, I could work it out, but I thought I shouldn't need 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I should be able, if I hear it, I should be able to play it, and but it's a different skill set. It's a different way of knowing the instrument, and so, actually, since that time, that's been something I've really worked on, and since I've worked on it, I've gotten better at it, and now I plan on still getting better at it, but I'm at the point where I'm pretty good at it now. And so now when I do that, when I have something in my head and I play it perfectly the first time in real time, like as I'm inventing it, my guitar is playing the same thing. That that kind of improvisation
Yeah,
feels so good and is
yeah,
so satisfying. And that's the answer. It's like when my inner melodic generator can speak with no delay. No one, I don't have to stop and practice or work it out. I can just play what I hear. That's a different kind of improvising than letting my fingers run free with the fingering patterns that I know. And I like both things still. I haven't given up because you can't, for the fast stuff, it's faster than you can hear sometimes.
correct. Yeah,
But that balance of both, to be able to play, a really convincing melody that's honest and is what you really heard, and then to be able to set the place on fire with some fast stuff. I love both those elements. I wouldn't want to lose either one. But the one that in a way seems simpler to me that it took a lot of work to develop that because it's just I never did.
I'm sure it's a great deal of practice. Uh, you know, of course, like staying focused and something beyond just the virtuosity, like you rightly mentioned. It
Well,
takes a lot. Yeah,
it's its own kind of virtuosity
yeah, yeah.
because it's for me playing a melody with all the small details
Uh huh.
that bring it to life
Correct.
because it's more than just the notes and the rhythm. There's all the contrasts
Yeah, yeah.
of of volume and the contrast of how long the note is and the texture
Uh huh.
and all those differences that you can produce. Those bring the melody to life, and to be in control of those is is really you have to be a virtuoso
Sure.
in its own way. That's just as demanding as all the fast stuff.
Correct. So let's talk a little bit about the new release, Holy Diver. It made me
Oh,
think of Dio, right? Dio because of the Holy Diver song name. Is there
well, it
any
is a
refer?
Dio song. It's a cover.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I
Well,
didn't know.
I did a whole I don't know when the
Interesting.
interview is going to come out like later this month, right?
Uh huh. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then I can tell you because I think tomorrow is the official announcement.
Correct. Correct.
Um, Basically, I did an album of all Dio songs.
Yeah.
And the album is called the Dio album.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And and I think I've got the cover.
Marvelous.
Yeah.
Lovely. Lovely.
So that's the Dio album and Holy Diver's first single.
Correct.
But I think I did 12 Ronnie James Dio songs. I mean, it's a mix of solo Dio
Uh huh.
and Black Sabbath and Rainbow.
Marvelous.
And I'm playing all the vocal lines on guitar.
Oh, okay.
So and of course I'm playing the guitar parts on the guitar, and I played the bass, and then I hired a great drummer to play drums, and man, it was fun. I love that music, and to be able to play both the guitar. Well, actually, the bass was so much fun too. I just had a blast recording it.
I can't wait for us to have like an album review in India once it's out.
Yeah,
So be
I
sure to
think
hit
you'll
me
dig it.
up.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you a spiritual person? Does spirituality play any role in your music?
Well, it's funny. That's a word that I think means different things to different people.
Hmm.
And because of that, I don't really know what it means. So, I mean, there might be some people like, "Oh, yeah, I know exactly." But, I'm trying to think. I guess what it means is that during the day, when I'm just, talking to you or cooking dinner or, doing the laundry or whatever, there's a certain certain way that I'm perceiving, that I'm thinking, a certain like kind of level of excitement. That's just sort of your normal going about your day. And then there's other moments
Uh-huh.
where you feel different,
It,
where where, where everything sort of changes in the way you're perceiving things,
mhm.
and that happens most often with music.
Correct.
It can happen with your relationship with someone else too, or something out of the ordinary happens.
Yeah.
But to me, like actually, when I'm teaching, because that's probably where I spend the most time these days. I do a lot of teaching, and I'll be every time I teach, I always use a musical example. I'll
Okay.
take like a short phrase, maybe two bars,
Uh-huh.
and I'll just play it over and over again to sort of demonstrate, to get it in the ear of the student. Because to me, that's the first step, is like listening.
Yes.
And I don't write any, none of my lessons are written down. It's not about sight reading. It's about listening to what it sounds like, and feeling the energy of the music. And so when I do that, I really try to get deep into it, and I'm hardly ever looking. My eyes are closed, and and of course it's music and guitar, so it's something that I've been attached to for decades, and that takes me to a place that feels different. So I don't know if that I don't know if spirituality is the right word,
Correct.
but
Yeah.
that to me feels the most different than when I'm doing the laundry or washing the dishes.
This conversation is just going to get better because I'm planning to invite my special guest. I couldn't think of a better name than Mohini Dey, who's our special guest for today. So she's been professionally working in the music industry since the age of 9 and
Wow.
has toured all over the globe under her own name. And she's collaborated with Steve Vai, Guthrie Govan, Simon Phillips, Marco Miniman, Dave Weckl, Mike Stern, Mr. A.R. Rahman from India. So she mentioned that she was introduced to you at the Sweetwater headquarters at Indiana while she was
All right.
rehearsing for the Cruise to the Edge alongside Randy McStein and Nick and Marco. So
Yeah,
let's
right on.
find out more from the incredible Mohini Dey herself.
Hello.
Hi.
That is a cool chair.
Thank you. It's a
Uh,
gamer's chair, actually. I love playing shooting games sometimes.
I got to get a chair like that. That's fantastic.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. What are you working on in the world of music?
So today we recorded 5 songs
Oh my
for
goodness.
our upcoming album.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And so I had a long day, but I'm really happy to be talking to you. I don't know if you remember, but we met the very first time at Sweetwater when Marco Miniman introduced us.
I remember
And you were doing some master class, I think.
something like that, or recording thing, or both.
Something like that. Yeah, and I was rehearsing with Nick Virgilio and Randy McStein and Marco for Cruise to the Edge.
Right on.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so happy to be a part of this interview. Thanks for inviting me, Aditya.
Likewise,
Well,
likewise.
who
Absolute
gets to
pleasure.
ask the questions? I've got some, but I'm
I
not
don't
the
know.
I'm not the
I
main
guess
guy.
well, I guess I have some questions too, so we'll all
Okay,
ask questions to each other.
I'll let you go first.
Oh, putting me on the hot spot there.
I'm sorry. What's the
Okay,
question again?
Aditya. So
Take it away. Take it away.
there is no question. Oh, you want me to ask? I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
you have something
No, take it
before.
away. It's all
Okay,
yours.
let's
Yeah.
see. Let's start a little light because this is the first time we're actually getting into a conversation. So,
Yeah.
what is the most ridiculous piece of gear that you own at the moment?
Well, the newest one. Let me find it.
Liquid tape.
Liquid tape. It's really smelly, and it's really ugly. It's really ugly too. And you brush it on to a pick,
Okay.
and that way it's much easier to hold it, because there's like it's sort of like a rubber, and then it won't slip out of your
Does it
hand,
grip
and
well? Is
you,
it
you
does it
can
give you a
grip
nice
it more
grip?
easily, and it also
Yeah.
makes a
Okay.
little cushion. So I've been
Oh, cool.
I,
That's fun.
yeah. So I've been doing experiments with like how many coats, and one coat is fine, but
That's
it's too bad
amazing.
because my picks I always like make custom ones with printing and they look really I think they look cool, and this just like goes
Yeah.
right over, glops over, it looks horrible, it smells like toxic waste, but I play better.
That's the main thing. That's the goal, right? Playing
Yeah,
better every day. That's the
yeah.
goal. Well, if
How
I
about
can show
you?
you my
I want to
ridiculous
see.
piece of gear, this
Yeah.
is the one. This is whoops. Well,
Oh.
that was not good. Hold it. I'll be back.
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
What happens when you pick up a ridiculously heavy piece of gear? That's what
Yeah.
happens. Let's see. Okay, there you go. This time a little more careful. It's heavier than I am. So this has got one body
Oh
but two
yeah.
necks.
Ooh. So how do you hold it, or do you spin it around?
Uh, no, I'm not planning on spinning with this at all. But this is 8 string on one side,
Yeah.
and the other side it's a 5 string fretless.
So do you wear it on a strap and you like play in every direction with your arms, or is it more of a studio thing where you can flip it over and do what you want?
Well, I just received it a month ago, and I was in Los Angeles for a month, so I didn't get to try it. I still have to set it up and actually play and see if it sounds any good. A company sent it to me, so I'm gonna try it out sometime next week after I set it up nice.
Yeah.
Set up the action real low because that's how I like it. So it I can play it easier. But at the moment, it's like we all know now, it's super heavy. So I have to find a good strap so it doesn't snap when
Yeah.
I play on stage. But I
Does,
think I would use this. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
yeah. Well, does it smell okay?
Yeah, it smells fine. Yeah, it
Okay.
smells
Well,
fine.
then
I
it's
would
better
use
than
this.
mine.
Yeah, I would use this. I think potentially on a song that has parts that would cater fretless and um, fretted,
Yeah.
more chordal stuff on the 8 string, so I can play high. Anyway, not to get more geeky and keeping it very light. Do you have anything for me?
Let's see. Uh, well, I've been playing bass. I played bass on my last album, and I can't even remember why I started doing this, but I started using flat wounds on everything, and
Oh,
they're
that's
hard.
nice.
They seem like it's harder to play. Like it's not really. But I don't know. Maybe it gets rid of the squeaks or something. But have you ever tried flat wounds, and what do you like
Yeah,
about them if you did?
I like them because they're smoother sounding, definitely.
Yeah,
So I use them on fretless basses more often. I would not use them on fretted basses, mainly because I'm a part of more progressive rock bands,
yeah,
and flat wounds don't do much for that sort of music. They want distortion and more gritty sounds,
yeah.
grungy sounds and more crush and stuff. So obviously the round one works better, but flat ones when I'm playing ballads or if I'm playing in a jazz setup, then flat ones are great. Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
my
I'm
other
playing a
question is,
jazz set next week. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
well, then
There's
my
a
other
huge
question is,
latency.
yeah, in in the music that you like to listen to or that you grew up listening to, which bass player on record is the loudest in the mix?
Oh, I'm gonna be very naughty here and say no one. Mostly it's guitar players who are loud,
Yeah. To me,
but
there's
there
yeah.
are
Go
some
ahead.
exceptions.
Yeah.
There are
The,
some
the, one- yeah.
exceptions.
The one I always think of, I don't know if I even know his name, but there's the band Humble Pie, which like it's classic rock, early '70s rock band,
Uh-huh.
and the bass player from Humble Pie was great bass player, but he's just so much louder than everybody else that you can't help but
That's
kind of go like,
rare.
Well, there he is, and it works. You wouldn't want to change anything, but if to just be inspired by the sheer volume of where he is, where he sits in those mixes.
I believe you. I don't doubt you. I believe you, because I was recording a project with Simon Phillips just a few months ago, and he was sharing some stories where he had his fair share of bass loudness with some, I'm not going to name, but few players. And I was like, oh, wow. And you wouldn't think, because, I grew up listening to these bass players and guitar players and drummers, seeing them on CDs. My dad would put like CDs on DVD players, and I grew up seeing all of them on my TV at that point. So
now, what about in the recorded music that you grew up with? Who's the quietest in the mix? Who you were like, man, I can barely hear them. It's hard to figure this out.
I don't know, a triangle player. That's funny. But let me ask you. So, who is your favorite guitar player from before your generation, and who is your current favorite guitar player at the moment from this time?
Well, when I first started listening to music, I didn't really know what guitar was, because I was kind of focused on the singing, and I knew what it looked like, because I'd look at the Beatles would be on the cover and they'd be holding guitars, but if you listen to those the '60s recordings, it's like the vocals are really loud. Next is the tambourine, and then somewhere way down in the mix, the guitar is tinkering away, and then once in a while a riff sticks out. But overall, those are vocal albums. And so the first time I started to notice guitar was probably like Led Zeppelin, but even the first Zeppelin song I heard, I was focused on the vocals. So it might have been I had a 45 that somebody gave me of Leslie West. I mean, the band was Mountain, a song called Mississippi Queen. And it's one of the great cowbell intros. The song just starts with donk, 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 and then the guitar comes in. It's just this great loud guitar riff, and the solos are great. So that really caught my ear. Like, wow, that's a cool sound. And then my uncle was a great guitar player, and he's like, you got to listen to Jimi Hendrix, and so he made me get this album called War Heroes, which was like one of the albums that was put together after Hendrix died, and it was just sort of like a mishmash of collection of songs. But I still love that album. There was an instrumental on it called Midnight, and and Jimmy was one of those guys where he could be out of tune, and it worked. Like it didn't. You wouldn't want to fix it. Like it just somehow it was almost better. And so that particular song, again, the guitar's like cranking in the mix, and it's just this long solo. There's no vocals, and his tone is amazing, and whoever mixed it did like some post-production flanging, which is sort of the swirly sound. And a lot of the players in the '70s that I really liked, I think that was actually kind of rare that it was post, in the mix. Usually it was a pedal. But like the stuff that Hendrix did with the Univibe, or later on players like Robin Trower, Frank Marino, Pat Travers, Alex Lifeson, they all had like, flangers or Univibes or A shifters. Peter Frampton too had it has the Leslie. Yeah. And so all those players that had that kind of swirly sound, they'd play one note and it would go like, whoa, 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 whoa. It'd have to have this like modulation to it.
Right.
I think that it somehow satisfied the part of me that would have done drugs. I never did drugs. I never wanted to do drugs, because I always was worried that it would mess up my brain. But that feeling of like the world is swirling, and there's like this psychedelic feeling. I got that from listening to the swirly pedals.
So you must be a huge fan of trying out different pedals, right?
It gave me that emotion of I hear Frank Marino just like sustaining a chord, and it felt like I had
Yeah.
just done acid, you know.
Is there a specific pedal that you see yourself reaching out to more often these days?
Well, yeah, probably there's a pedal by Full Tone called the Deja Vibe, which is like a reproduction of the Univibe, and that's
Ah,
that's one of the
cool.
best ones. But there's a bunch of pedals that
Yeah,
have
I
that kind
love
of
the
effect.
Mooger Fooger. That's one of my favorite ring modulators. Like it sounds
Yeah.
so cool.
So
Yeah,
it's
that's
nice
really
to
cool.
have that option to to like get that satisfaction emotionally without having to like destroy
Yeah,
your brain with some chemicals. So
yeah, yeah.
it's a much better
So
choice, I
how
think.
often? Right, right. I mean, after doing so much in the industry, this question, the following question, I think would be something that I would love to ask you. How much time throughout your day are you thinking about music, or are you not?
I've always thinking about it a lot. It's I think the thing that's happened to me is that when I was a kid, I would have it on all the time. You know, it would
Hmm.
almost be like a panic. Like I can't function until some
Every
music is playing.
corner.
Yeah, so it would be like, wait, I can't do my homework. I can't, do whatever it is I'm doing. The first I got to put a record on the stereo,
Hmm.
and now, I actually have really bad hearing loss. So
Okay.
I don't really listen to music as much because I can't hear it so well, and if I do listen to music, I have to really focus on it. So I have to like,
Ah,
okay,
I
now
see.
I can't do other things. Like it's rare that I'll have music on in the background because I
Right.
I have to focus too much. So I have to rely on the music in my head instead. And I've
Ah,
developed that a lot more. The being able to be aware of that part of me that sort
right.
of hears music soundlessly,
Uh-huh.
without it being going on in the exterior world. And it's been
Ah,
really it's actually been really enriching to to hone that to practice that part where you can hear without sound. And you know what it's
right.
great for? I never need to have a monitor like at sound check. I just tell the monitor guy like just skip me because I
Really?
everything I'm
Wow.
hearing is internal. I mean, I need to hear the snare and the kick, but
Right,
I
right,
don't I barely need to hear myself because I know what it's supposed to sound like and I know the instrument. So
right,
it makes it so much easier to play because I don't and in a way I don't need to
right.
hear it because it's I know what it feels like and what it looks
And
like.
all your live shows, do you have a click running throughout, or no?
Oh,
It's all live.
no, a click would actually be a disaster because I would have to hear it.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because if you're
Yeah.
not using in ears, then probably
Yeah,
no click
and I've probably lost a lot of hearing from clicks because clicks is like dog
from the
dog dog.
click. I
Yeah,
know it's
so
so
they're
bad.
dangerous.
Yeah,
But I do
yeah.
what I try to do is I try to be physically close to the drummer. So
Yeah, right.
it's the
To
hardest
get the
situation.
energy close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it's like a big stage and the drummer's like 25 feet away, that's rough. Then I need to have a wedge with a kick and snare cranking out. Um,
Right, right.
but
Yeah.
in general, I love being physically close because then not only do you hear it, but you feel it, and to feel
Right,
just the
right.
air moving from the kick, and that's I just connect to it so much better that way. So I'm always, even if it's a
Right.
big stage, I always ask the people who are setting up the stage, like, get me close to the drummer. That's like how I connect to everything.
So, having played all over the world, you must have lots of great stories. How about you share one of the most, I don't know, memorable tour memory
Let's see. Well,
or
I'll have to
stage
remember it.
memory?
Yeah, the first one that comes to me is, I mean, it's been a while since I've been, with the lockdown, and I got used to staying home. I would
Right.
say one. Let me like the most recent one was interesting because I did a clinic in where I live in Portland,
Hmm.
and I decided to do it without a drummer, but I really try not to play with backing tracks So I just had a bass player,
Mm-hmm.
just guitar and bass. And in a way, we did have something like drums because I have a little, I'll show it to you. This is embarrassing. It's covered with cat hair. Um, it's a hockey puck that I
Okay.
have velcroed onto a piece of plastic that's got like those things that
Yeah,
stick into
I
a
see
carpet,
that.
and you plug it
Yeah.
in, and it's a bass drum. So you put it on the
Oh,
floor,
cool.
and I can stomp on it and keep time with my left foot. And so that's the drums, and
Analog throughout.
it's not like cool drums, it's not like a beat with
Right.
with a snare and cymbals, and it's
Yeah.
something all I
Uh-huh.
can do is bonk bonk bonk, but I can keep time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's human time, it's not a click, it's not a backing track, it's somewhat
Yeah.
dynamic, I can be quiet and loud, and and we played, we worked out the songs themselves with some very complex arrangements going on, and that's,
Right.
we kept it all together with that. And so I think, as if I was a teenager, that would have just scared me to death. Like, what? There's no drummer. How are we going to rock? Because that's such a
Right.
big part of like the texture of rock and roll is to have that,
Yeah.
the hi hat and texture was a big, really important element. Whereas I think that's part of the thing with my hearing loss. Since I've lost a lot of, basically most of my treble's gone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have that same perception of texture. And so the
Mm-hmm.
elements that I've got left are like pitch, rhythm, dynamics, and that's, I tend to focus more on those. And
Okay.
that was an interesting gig, and I thought it went fine. But probably nicer to have a real
Yeah.
drummer, but and I still prefer to have drummers. But it just to like sort of branch out and go like, it's possible. You can have other instrumentations, and it's still music, and people still have a good time. And I was still able to
Right.
I was still able to give it my all, and it's
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that as a teenager, but that's nice to like open that door.
Yeah. No, I think you are such a big inspiration and an idol to so many people. And looking at you, so many kids, at least from what I've seen in India, every time they come up to me, I was like, Paul Gilbert is my idol and my biggest influence. I've had such a big uh, influence on my playing. I grew up listening to Paul Gilbert's videos and stuff, and it's always very overwhelming to hear people and hear kids say that, or anybody. So for the listeners, and I know like a lot of people know you obviously as the guitar legend, but when you're not doing music, what are you doing?
Well,
Is there something that you like doing apart from music? Or even better, if you were to pursue a profession, um, then at this point, then what would it be if not musician?
yeah,
If
well,
not music.
that'd be hard. And it's funny because actually music is probably, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think music is one of the best professions for someone with hearing loss, which seems very like
But
that
it
doesn't make,
happened after, right?
yeah, it
It
happened
wasn't
after, yeah.
present at
Yeah.
first.
But it, like, now, if I had to have a job where I understood people speaking, that would be
Yeah.
rough. Uh, and that's the thing. Like, I found, because musicians are performers, like I can understand
Hmm.
you because you are a clear speaker. You're familiar with like being on stage and having to communicate very clearly,
Right.
just in general, whether it's music or speaking. In that situation, you can't like
Right.
whisper or mumble. Everything has got to be kind of bigger and more obvious as a performer, and you
Right.
learn. So when I'm amongst
Yeah.
musicians, I almost feel like, oh, I'm fine. I don't have hearing loss. Then I get, among like people that aren't performers, and I'm like, I can't understand
Right.
anybody. It's like, what
like
happened?
I like I apart from doing music, I run a clothing line. I design my outfits and I stitch clothes, and I do that on the side. A lot of people don't know. It's a secret which I just revealed on this podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
So and I love anything related to creativity, art. Like I
Yeah.
literally painted my own walls in the house. So that's like another side of me, which is more to being a musician. So
Yeah.
is there something, do you like painting? Do you like construction? Do you like interiors? Or, I remember Simon saying he loves carpentry work.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I wish I loved
Yeah.
carpentry. Then I could fix things when they break. Um, I did a lot of drawing when I was a kid, and I still do sometimes. But it's funny because like both drawing and also writing, like writing a story or writing a writing as in
Like
English.
newsletters,
Uh,
newsletters or novels.
well, like recently, I wrote like you have to write like, oh, what's your top favorite albums? I'll write up like a
Oh,
you know
okay.
that sort of thing.
Like
And
a
I
survey,
realized,
like a
yeah,
survey.
and I realized that when I'm being myself as a writer, I don't really like the process, but I like the result. Like when I read it back, I think it's funny and I like what I've written. And it's almost
Right.
the opposite with music. With music, I love the process, but then I'll listen to it back and go like, eh. So
It's always like that. It's like, I
I'm
could have
not,
done that better. Why
yeah,
did I do
I'm not
that?
always happy with the result, but I have so much fun when I'm playing. So and actually the
Yeah.
same thing with drawing, like the process of drawing to me is like, oh, this
Yeah.
is just bored and it takes forever. But then when it's done, it's like, oh, I kind of like it. It looks kind of cool. So I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. What about guitar making? Do you on the side, because this is like my dad loves making guitars and basses from like pieces of wood. My first bass was made by my dad because we were
Oh,
not
that's so cool.
financially
Incredible.
very strong. So he had a friend who had like a spare pickup and like spare pieces of like wood. So he took them and he made a bass for me. And that was
Yeah.
like the tiniest bass in the whole world for me to play on at the age of 3. And so that kind of stayed with me, and I haven't even tried doing it, but it's something in the back of my mind that I would love to try, which is making pieces of, instrument.
Yeah.
Is that something that you have done or you do?
A little bit. Well,
Like putting pickups on different bodies and putting
yeah,
that bridge on some other body,
yeah. I've got a soldering iron over there. So we lost her.
I think she'll be back. Yeah. Go on. Go
Yeah.
on.
Oh, so when I was a kid, the same thing with my dad.
Uh-huh.
We would get a lot of. It was funny. Like every time I joined a band, it seemed like the drummer would say, "Hey, I've got this broken guitar in the closet. Do you want it?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah." So he'd give me some broken guitar. We'd find some parts real cheap and put it together. And so I learned how to solder and how to how to wire up a volume pot and that kind of stuff. I still do that sometimes now. And but of course, I also work with the company Ibanez, and so sometimes I'll design stuff on Photoshop, and then and they'll build it.
In the interest of time, I'd like to wind up with one last segment, which is a rapid fire round for Paul as well as Mohini. I'd like
Oh
both of you to
shit. Okay.
participate, uh, and let's see how you guys do and who fares better.
Okay.
Okay.
So, when you're unhappy, what is it that gives you? Let's use the contemporary jargon, the greatest high.
For me, if I found that if I go to the Van Halen song "Beautiful Girls" and I play the David Lee Roth vocal line,
Uh huh.
his melody on my guitar,
Okay.
just seaside swinging, just smoking and drinking and being sad on top of the world. Oh yeah, I immediately start feeling better.
Wonderful. That's a great choice again. Speaking of Van Halen, who, I mean, being part of Van Halen, who would be your preferred lead singer? Would it be David Lee Roth or would it be Sammy Hagar?
Well, I grew up with those David Lee Roth albums, so I mean, Sammy did a great job, but to me, the Dave era is just the level of excitement that they created during those times. I was there. I was every tour from Van Halen 2, which was one of my first concerts, all the way up to 1984. I saw every show, and they were talk about spiritual. That was otherworldly. It was so exciting.
Coming back to Mohini, when you're unhappy, say for instance, what is it that gives you, let's use the contemporary jargon, the greatest high?
What gives me the greatest high?
When you're unhappy.
When I'm unhappy, I usually stitch. Actually, that's like my therapy. So
Okay.
yeah, I stitch, I design, I get to stitching, I make my own outfits, and I wear them on stage, and that makes me feel very powerful because I'm in my own
Marvelous.
outfit, feeling like a diva. Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, you're into so many things. Is there something that you can't do?
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Next question. You can go first, Paul. What is that one song that always makes you cry?
Oh, well, the first one that comes to mind is "Crying," which is a Roy Orbison song,
Oh,
and the Katie Lang version. I've some she performed it a lot in her set in the '90s, and there's a lot of good bootlegs, high quality bootlegs of her singing that song, and man, to make it through and more recently there's a recording. So on YouTube you can find it. Gary Moore and Scott Gorham,
okay.
b- and they do. I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's a Thin Lizzy song. Uh, Rosen. So it's like in an old Irish language. It's basically the like it's this long song that's on the Black Rose album. It's a
Okay.
Phil Lynott tribute, and the first three notes of the guitar solo, Gary Moore goes, "Boop, boop," maybe it's four notes, "Da, da, da, da," and he throws his head back right when he hits that high note. Every time I'm just tears are coming out of my eyes. It's so
So
good.
that's Paul Gilbert's version of how to cry, and that rock guitar line makes Paul cry.
Head thrown back, highest note.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's hilarious.
And you, Mohini?
Uh, so I think for me, it's mixed feelings. It also makes me happy, but I also get very emotional when I hear that song. But I will also put it to torture myself because why not? It's called "Ordinary People" by George Benson, and when
Great choice.
you hear that guitar solo in the middle section, it's like all this soul and peace and like love right there. But in the start, it's like makes you emotional, you know? So that's my answer.
On the contrary, what is your favorite guilty pleasure song?
Paul, you go first.
Let's see. Well, there's two kinds of guilt. there's guilt that you generally feel if like only you know about it. And then there's stuff that you're afraid that if anybody else finds out, they won't you'll get in trouble. For myself, well, I remember as a kid, I had to hide certain albums because my dad was kind of a rock and roll purist. So any music that was like kind of careful music, like meticulous music, my I knew my dad wouldn't like that. He wanted like loose, sweaty music. And so I had a Carpenters album that I really liked.
Oh, okay.
It was like the Carpenters singles, all the hits. And I'd have to wait for
Yeah.
my dad to leave, and then I would put that album on, listen to it until he came back. And then also like I grew up listening to Ted Nugent, that'll get you in trouble these days. But the Great White Buffalo,
Yeah.
that riff, it's so chunky.
Stands out.
It's just like one of the best chunky moments. And and just like all the stuff he says before the songs, it's just so funny that I still have to admit I love that old Ted stuff. That was me as a 12-year-old. So.
Incredible.
That's funny. So that would be similar in my situation because my dad is involved too in my upbringing, right? Because he's my teacher. But he hates metal music and he hates rock music. Sorry, Paul. But I grew up to like metal and rock music, and I started playing in rock bands. I toured with the biggest Japanese pop rock band for 4.5 months, and I unleashed like a different side of me, you know. And I didn't know like I would play with distortion on bass. That was the first time. This was in 2000, I think 18 or 19. That was the first time I used like distortion on bass, and I felt so powerful.
Yeah.
And I was headbanging and I was singing in Japanese and playing my bass, and it was a 3 hours concert. I was playing in my 6-inch high heels, and it was amazing. It was like incredible. But I came back from the tour and I never played those songs to my dad, but I would listen to them in secret because he would say like, you should play something melodious. You should play with soul. All this
Yeah.
this is all fast stuff. Don't play all this. You know? I'm here, I've done like a 4.5 months, I've been on road and playing all this music, and it was hard. Like it was the first time that I had to learn everything by heart and like, sing in Japanese and play bass. And it was definitely a life-changing experience for me. But yeah, so that I would say like that whole record I recorded for their album called Whole Lotta New Love. So that's like one of the albums that I listen to in secret. And that's like one of my guilty pleasures, I would say. And like some of the clients that I recorded for recently, and they are very heavy and technically challenging. And I tell you what, like all the technically challenging stuff, it comes to me for some reason. So then I have to play all these quintuplets and quadruplets on the bass. And yeah, so but I like listening to them. It's fun now. But if this was me like 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to handle even for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Marvelous. If the two of you
Yeah.
had this opportunity to put together an all-star rock band, who'd be in it?
Oh, I
know
think Paul should go.
on vocals, Bon Scott, guitar, Angus and Malcolm Young, on bass, Cliff Williams, on drums, me. I want to be the drummer of AC/DC.
Oh, okay.
That would be so much fun.
Would you
That's
like to
great.
add?
I think for me, it would be, let's see, I think Marco. Marco is a great rock drummer. I would ask Paul if he would be interested. And I would play bass. I've tried drums and I suck at it, so I wouldn't be on drums. Um, what else? I would have Direct Sharanian maybe Direct Sharanian and Jordan Rudess together. Yeah, so I can have the textural vibe as well as the fire, together is like amazing. So yeah, both of them and two guitar players. So yeah, whoever Paul would love to play with.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. Thank you for including me in the band.
Oh my God, no, that's like a dream come true.
Well,
What's your
hopefully
favorite?
hopefully I won't mess it up with too much shred.
No.
What's your favorite cuisine?
Oh, favorite what?
Cuisine.
Cuisine.
Oh, cuisine. Oh my goodness. Well, the first thing comes to mind, I don't know if it's really a cuisine, but it's just a kind of food. Fruit. Every morning, the first thing I do when I get up is I squeeze fresh orange juice. Any kind of fresh fruit is like my favorite thing. I was watching a special about like monkeys that eat fruit. I think I must be half monkey because I could just eat fruit all day. This is one of my favorite things.
I only eat meat. I don't eat any vegetables. And yeah, so that's like everywhere I go, and the whole industry knows about this. And so I categorize event organizers as non-vegetarian event organizers and vegetarian event organizers, because there was this one time, this was like way early in my early playing days, and I was put up in a vegetarian hotel, and that was a disaster because I couldn't eat anything. And it's almost like I'm allergic to it. It's not like I don't want to eat it. I eat and I puke, so I can't eat it. So it's so then the organizer had to take me to a restaurant nearby, And I said, I literally won't be able to do the show because all my energy comes from meat. So my
Yeah.
album is called Meat Eater, which is coming out this year.
Oh wow. Yeah. Looking
Is
forward
there
to
is there? I mean, there's the usual kind. There's beef and chicken and pork and lamb, but is there any kind of other animal that is really delicious or incredible that is that you've discovered?
So I love beef. We don't get that in this part of the world. But whenever I go to the US, I love having a steak. I eat steak almost every day when I'm there, which is not great, but I love it. It's like it's so good. I also love seafood. But I love pork as well. We get that here. So that's I make pork momos, kind of like dumplings. We call
Yeah.
them momos here. So I make them at home. I love cooking and I love eating. So I will cook and eat at home. And I have to say though, like Indian food is like it's 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 culturally so diverse. It's like a
Yeah.
wide range of. It's not just the masala. It's like so many different masalas and so many different like languages, and every city has its own taste, you know?
Yeah.
So that's one thing about being in India. You get to try something different and new every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what has been the most embarrassing moment on stage for the two of y'all?
Well, let's see. Well, I mean, there was. Let me get the prop. So this is your normal
Oh,
drill,
yeah. I know
and
this.
I take the drill bit out. I've got a different one that has guitar picks on the end,
Right.
and you put that in, and then you can play guitar really fast.
Really fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
That looks cool.
And so I used to do that in my guitar solo all the time. And one day, I was I was about to do it, and I wanted to do that thing where you put your hand like, "Hey, audience, I'm listening. Make some noise." I can't hear you. Make some noise. But I had the drill in my hand, and it was going, and I had really long hair, and so it went, "Nyeh," and it got caught in my hair, and I couldn't let go because it would pull my hair and it hurt.
My
So I had,
goodness.
I was trying to get it out, and the guitar is hanging, going, whoa, feeding back. And it was
Oh.
it was about 10,000 people in the audience because we were opening up for Rush, the big arena.
Oh.
And so I'm just going like, what what am I doing right now? Like this,
That's
this
funny.
is
That's
like
so
Spinal
funny.
Tap. And so finally I went back.
Yeah.
You could slowly unwind it, but that was pretty. I
Wow.
wish. I wish that it had been like that was before the days of cell phone cameras, so nobody got any film of it. But that would have been an amazing thing to have documented on video.
Yeah, I have multiple embarrassing stories on stage. First one being, I was wearing this big ball gown, a big blue ball gown, and this is in front of like 70,000 people or so. And this was an A.R. Rahman show, and I was given a feature spot to come in the center of the stage and do my solo, just myself. And this is a 3 hour concert where we're playing like some of the biggest hit songs, and the music director has given me like one spot to just come and play for like 5 minutes just by myself. And there are cues that are happening like 4, 3, 2, 1, go Mohini. So then I take my position, and then the
Yeah.
spotlight comes on, and then I play. Guess what? I'm walking down the staircase. So I was on a riser. Every musician has its own riser for this show, and I'm on a riser, and I walk down the staircase, and my ball gown gets stuck on one of the nails on the staircase. And
Oh.
so I'm trying to pull my dress, trying to like, I'm like, at this point, even if it rips, I don't care. I need to get to my position, but it's a
Yeah.
huge stage. So I'm trying to rip my dress. At some point, I'm able to do it, but by that time, the director was like, okay, next song.
Oh no.
They put the spotlight on and nobody's there, so they turn it off. Next song. So then the next song, I couldn't go back to my spot, and I had to play the next song from the staircase.
Yeah.
And that was hilarious. It was really
Oh.
funny. And the second one was related to hair. I loved chewing a gum back then. I had big curly hair, and I love playing with hair. I do crochet braids and lots of different kinds of hair. So sometimes I have those extensions, and at that point I have had those extensions, and I was chewing a gum. And while playing, one of my curly strands went in my mouth, and the gum got stuck in my hair. And we had these GoPros and all these cameras in front of me, and they showed me on like the screen, and everybody's like, "What is that white thing hanging on her hair?" You know. So that was really funny. Yeah, well, funny stories.
It happens. I have one last question for the two of you, which is a custom in all of my podcasts, shall we say. Down in the distant horizon, what would you want to be remembered as?
Deep.
Well, it's amazing to be in a position where you might be remembered at all. But I think at the moment, I've just, I've been able to accomplish certain things like memorable guitar moments. But the one thing that I still don't think I've done that I'd like to would be like just one really great blues solo that people who like blues solos would like.
Okay.
In other words, that goes beyond the people who are metal fans, but somebody who's like into BB King would hear it and they'd go like, "Ah, that's cool." So it's sort of like being able to speak the language fluently to the people who speak that language.
I think for me, the answer is very simple because music is something that is always going to stay in my life. And with all the things that I've done so far, me being 18 and a half years in the industry, worked with so many amazing, incredible musicians from all over the world. I'm really grateful for it. It's not something that I ever dreamt of. It's not something that I wanted to do, it just all kind of happened, and I challenged myself and worked hard and kept moving forward in life. My dreams were very simple. I wanted to own a house. I wanted to have my freedom, make my own decisions in life, and didn't want to be told by or controlled by anyone. I wanted to control myself. And at this point, the position that I'm in, I am all of it. I'm able to make my decisions myself, and I run a business. I am my own manager. I manage a lot of bands. I organize events. I work for a lot of companies as well. I do music because it makes me happy, not something because I need to do. So I think when or if I'm ever gone, I want to be remembered as somebody who was just a good person and somebody who supported them and helped them in any sort of way, because I'm a giver. I when I see a potential talent or when I see something or something that needs to be done, I go all out and I try to help and make way for that person, because the position that I'm holding, I can do that. And so I try to pass on the power, as much as I can. So when I'm gone, all the people by that time that I would have worked with, I just want them to remember me and hopefully think that I was a great human being and it was a joy to work with me. That's all, Yeah.
Marvelous. Great answer for a closure. This interview will be additionally aired on Big FM Shillong and Aizawl, two radio stations in the northeastern part of India, and also part of my podcast series, Stalwarts of Music. We are on season 2 right now, and it will also be in YouTube on my channel in an audio video format and across all major audio streaming platforms. Thank you so much, Paul and Mohini. The two of you have touched me deeply indeed. Thank you so much for taking time out. And
thank you for having me.
Oh,
It's been an
nice to talk
incredible
to both of
blessing.
you.
Yeah, yeah. Stay in
Nice to
touch.
you
talk to you,
again.
Paul.
Right on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Doing
Thank
it.
you.